Coming up next, a guitarist from one of the late 80s premier rock groups tells us the story of the anthem that started it all for his band. This guitarist, he was actually really good friends with the biggest selling rock frontman of the late 80s. And he was in his band early on. But it didn't work out. So the icon helped his friend get a record deal, and then he had his rookie band open for him on a stadium tour. And within a few weeks of playing this song, the student actually surpassed the teacher. As the opening band, they were getting a bigger ovation than the headliner. The interview and the story of the song's coming up next. Hey Music Junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember your first rock concert with just pure joy and nostalgia, you're going to dig this channel of musical memories. Make sure that you subscribe below right now, click the big red button, and check the box and all that so you get our latest interviews and stories. So I'm excited to bring you yet another episode from our series, Revelations. This is where featured artists go deep on their greatest songs and albums. So the summer of 1989 was electric. I mean, in terms of blockbuster movies, you had Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and Batman.
Wait till they get a load of me.
Lethal Weapon 2, Dead Poets Society, Ghostbusters 2, Field of Dreams.
Field of Dreams.
So many great movies. A lot of great albums were released heading into and during that glorious summer as well. Pixies' Doolittle, Cure Disintegration. Tom Petty, Full Moon Fever, The Cult, Sonic Temple, Stone Roses' debut album. Don Henley, The End of the Innocents, Faith No More, The Real Thing, Motley Crue, Dr. Feelgood, so many more. Pop radio, it was being dominated by, Fine Young Cannibals and Milli Vanilli and Bobby Brown that summer. Hard rock and heavy metal was still holding its own. Jan Our Lives was released. New bands like Tesla and Warrant were making their voices heard. One band that began a steady rise to the top was the rough and ready Skid Row. Their opening shot was a monstrous rebel anthem that scorched radio altogether, Youth Gone Wild. Definitely made an impact on young kids, coming of age and looking for any excuse to defy authority. And Youth Gone Wild was the best answer at that moment. Well, band founder and guitarist and co-writer Dave Snake Sabo, he actually started out with Bon Jovi. He was in Bon Jovi. He was good friends with John Bon Jovi. And the two played together for a while. They grew up. It didn't work out, but Snake formed his own band, and they brought on a young singer named Sebastian Bach, who said that the first tape that he heard of the band's demos, Youth Gone Wild, it fit him perfectly. In fact, he even got the title tattooed on his arm. That's how much he believed in it. Skid Row was locked and loaded. John Bon Jovi was a good friend. He helped the band get a record deal. He even set him up to open for Bon Jovi on his New Jersey tour. A few weeks into the tour, Skid Row was dominating in the opening spot. And word started to travel that the rookie band, they were blowing the headliner off the stage. Now, I can tell you from my own experience, this scuttlebutt, it wasn't false. Skid Row and Bon Jovi, it's one of the first concerts that I went to. And I went for Bon Jovi. I can honestly say that the ear-decimating wailings of one Sebastian Bach, flanked by Snake and Scotty Hill and Rachel Bolan and Rob Hammersmith, they did blow Bon Jovi off the stage. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Neither could my friends. We all went out and bought the debut album right after, and today it still rocks. I remember wearing that cassette out. I know many of you have had similar experiences. I blasted Youth Gone Wild as loud as my stereo would possibly go. It's one of those songs that my dad yelled at me to turn down at least 50 times. Maybe the #1 song for that particular experience. It was just at that moment where I was listening to my music so loud. Skid Row, they're so underrated. It's not hair metal. It's not even glam metal. This is hard rock, heavy metal. Skid Row, first and second albums, as good as anything that was put out at that time. Seriously, go back and listen to this debut album. It still blows the mind. It's so awesome. Now, Dave's going to tell us that story. Now, as we get into this interview, I do want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear. Over 50 million pairs have been sold, and they also have a 30-day peace of mind return. Plus, you get to design your own glasses, the shape, the style, the color. Zenni's the only way to go. It's a no-brainer. And, add that to the fact that you can get a complete pair of prescription eyewear for up to 80% off regular retail prices. Click on the info button right up here to get the best price today. Eponymous debut album, Skid Row, released in '89. Worldwide sensation. I mean, the album sold over 5 million copies in America alone.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember buying that record. There are certain records, I mean, in my opinion, one of the best debut albums in the 80s. It was just a great moment.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That means a lot.
To have an album that so many great songs. But let's talk about that record, starting with the rock anthem, like I said, Youth Gone Wild. That was the band's first single. What was the impetus for creating that song with Rachel?
We had, one of the things that attracted, I think, us to each other was that we both felt like we were outcasts. We just didn't fit in. And music was our way of communicating what we couldn't communicate verbally. We wanted to write a song that sort of epitomized that alienation, not realizing that a lot of other people out there felt equally the same sort of alienation. And that was through our experiences of school, going to school and being sort of isolated by our peers, by people that we went to school with, by all the cliques in general. We weren't necessarily a part of any clique, if you will. And if we were, it was just a group of outsiders. And so through those experiences of getting mocked on because of your hair and how you look and how you dress. That was our retaliation. But we felt that there was a great unifying force there through that individuality. So we wanted to put that into words and music somehow. We had gone through several rewrites lyrically. We finally settled upon what is eventually made the record. But when we were done writing that song, we had a feeling that this was what epitomized who we were as a band, even at that early stage, even before we had finalized the lineup. It just felt really natural and it's a cliche, but very organic. Nothing was forced there. It was really straight from the gut and straight from the heart. It was one of those songs that it stood out. And we had written a ton of songs for the first record, but that was an obvious one that stood out. That kind of symbolized who we were. And still are as a band from an attitude standpoint, and through our ability to emotionally express what was going on in our young, naive minds at the time.
Youth Gone Wild starts with that Blood Rush Snake Sable guitar lick. You go from cross-string arpeggios to rapid pedal point licks, making that riff just like an instant classic.
Oh, thank you, man. You never can. It means a lot. I'm very humbled by that. You just never know where inspiration is going to come from. And again, all those influences that I spoke of earlier all played a part in what became, my part of Skid Row. My contribution to Skid Row. The initial riff was a bit more complicated than what it became, and I remember Rachel going, we should simplify this up a little bit. I was at the time, I was one of those guys that probably wanted to put more notes in something than what was really necessary. And he was the one who would sit there and say, hold on there, buddy. Let's pull back a little bit and let's straighten this out a little bit, maybe simplify it, make it a bit more straightforward. And good thing he did, because that obviously was a big part, and the dynamics of that song are a big part of why that song musically sounds the way it sounds. And dynamics was a thing I learned from all those albums listening to growing up. The peaks and valleys of the music and the vocals as well. When to go for it and when to hold back on it and making everything else more present by holding back on certain parts.
Well, and I think that's you kind of nailed what's missing from modern popular music that's mainstream music that's on the radio is the dynamics. There's no build. It's very scientific. There used to be 30 to 40 to 50 seconds before you'd even hear a vocal on certain hits. I mean, even like Take On Me by A-ha. That's such a big, past 1 billion views is one of the other song. I think Guns N' Roses has the other song, Sweet Child of Mine, that has 1 billion views from the 80s on YouTube. Doesn't come in till 43 seconds into the song. And it's totally fine to let the music just build and be what it is. And it just is missing. But you guys wrote this anthem. This was an anthem for my generation, my group of friends. I know it wasn't just us. I mean, I grew up in a small town in Idaho, and I know it wasn't just us. It was many people where Youth Gone Wild. It spoke to exactly what we were going through at that moment. The only other song I can remember at that particular time, a year and a half later, was Smells Like Teen Spirit. You guys were speaking to a generation.
Well, that's very, very kind of you to say. And again, very, very, very humbling. You know what? When you write a song, any song for that matter, you never know what the response is going to be, whether you're going to, touch people or not. You can only hope. The idea is you want to appeal to the emotions of as many people as you possibly can. And it turned out that we realized after the success of that song that, we weren't alone, that a lot of people around the world shared the same sentiments as we did. Of course, their experiences were probably a lot different than ours, but they shared some commonality with what they may have gone through growing up and what they were still going through. And that gave them a sense. I hope that would give them a sense of hope. Growing up, I would see bands like Twisted Sister in the clubs. Hearing songs like in their infancy, like We're Not Gonna Take It and things like that. It made you feel like, yeah, man, that's right. I feel that way. I get it. I get what this guy is saying, man. And this was before they were signed. This is the influence they had on me, going to see them in clubs. And it gave me hope. Watching John get signed and then watching Twisted Sister get signed, it gave me tremendous hope that, we can do this as well. We can do this. We just have to, we have to work really hard and not settle for good, not settle for something that's just good. It's got to be hopefully great.
Well, I mean, the lyrics, they call us problem child. We spend our lives on trial. We walk an endless mile. These were lyrics. These were words that meant something to us as kids that we felt like you said, outcasts. It's funny because a week ago I was doing an interview with Rob Halford.
Oh, wow. One of my favorites.
I brought up that word. It's kind of funny. I said, we're a bunch of outcasts, and we had two fists, new wave and heavy metal. And that was the music that we understood. And I don't know, maybe in big cities it was a little different where you were a metal guy or a new wave guy. But for us in a small town in Idaho, those were the two musics that were outside the genres, that were outside of the mainstream. We just were outcasts, and that was the only people that understood us. You could listen to Depeche Mode. And Skid Row. Judas Priest. And The Cure. And those bands seemed to really get what we were facing.
Sure, the angst and of your youth, they're exemplifying in their music. I totally understand that. See, we grew up in New Jersey. You kind of had metal and hard rock on one hand, and then punk rock on the other hand. It wasn't so much new wave where I was at. It was more punk rock, more Ramones. The Damned. I got a brand new rose in town. And obviously the Pistols. And then the Clash. They were more of an influence on Rachel than they were on me, but I was still very, very familiar with it, because especially the Ramones in the New York club scene downtown, which New York City was 45 minutes away from me, and so I spent a lot of time there. It was certainly influenced by everything that can influence you in that city, and there's a lot. And so you could tell, like, there's certain aspects you can hear the punk rock influence in certain aspects of our music.
Definitely. Well, it's funny because Rob's like, the Outcasts, you bring up a great point, Adam. The Outcasts, that's what the music was for. That's what I was doing.
Yeah, sure was.
It's true. When you don't feel like anybody understands you, music always does. That's always your companion.
I was influenced not only by guitar players and by songwriters and by vocalists as well. Very, very intrigued by Halford, especially. He was doing stuff that nobody was doing in the 70s. Like, no one was doing stuff like that. No one was doing Beyond the Realms of Death in the 70s. No one was doing Saints in Hell. Stuff that just seemed from the way outosphere to me. It was mind-boggling.
And bringing leather into it with the way he dressed and everything, such an influence.
Such an influence. Same thing with Iron Maiden. People weren't doing that.
Oh yeah, Bruce Dickinson.
And again, that goes back to, in that period of the new wave of British heavy metal, it was profound, the effect it had on me. And going to see them, those concerts, man, Judas Priest and Iron Maiden touring together, that's amazing. Like, that is a concert. That is, he said there used to be so many great concerts like that, and that, watching those bands play live, again, a profound influence of how they just connected with their audience. I could be in the second to last row, which I was for Kiss. And they connected with me. Obviously they connected with me, changed my life. And that continued with a lot of the hard rock and heavy metal bands I would go see. Aerosmith connected on a level. Look in the mirror. Van Halen. along with Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, and even bands like Angel Witch, which I never saw live. Loved them.
Well, Youth Gone Wild does definitely have, you can hear that influence of a lot of the bands that you've mentioned and that punk rock. It's basically giving the middle finger to the man and saying, this is who we are. And it's interesting because that song had the chart history of that song is very perplexing because it was so much bigger than its chart position. I mean, that was the song on the album, I would dare say, that we played probably more than any of the songs. And number 27 on the mainstream rock chart, and it went to number 99 on the Billboard Hot 100. That was weird because the music video was heavily played on MTV too.
I never understood that either, but you know, I'm not one to complain or lament. I feel that we were fortunate that we were able to get heard and seen as much as we did. That Bon Jovi tour gave us such a great opportunity for visibility in front of sold-out audiences every night. And, you know, the first show that we did was, I want to say January 24th, I think, of 1989, and I believe it was San Antonio. It was San Antonio or Dallas, but it was in Texas. And we didn't know what to think. No one had heard of us yet. We were just releasing the album. So there was no time for people to have heard us. So we were going out knowing that we had to do everything to win these people over. We had to do everything in our power. And that's the great thing about youth and being naive is that you just go full throttle. And we probably blazed through that set, like a 45-minute set. We probably went through it in like 27 minutes, you know. And we were just jamming it, the pedal to the metal, if you will. And so that was really such a great experience because never in our lives had we played to that amount of people, and we knew that we had to win them over every night. That no matter what, and we still have that same attitude that we've got to win people over every night. Nothing is a given. And no matter what the crowd size is, you have to win those people over. You have to put in the work, and you have to, you know, play to the best of your ability. And some nights it's not going to be there. That's just human nature. Some nights it's just not going to be there. But our attitude was we've always felt like we were the underdog, and we still do. And that's what inspires us to this day is that underdog mentality.
You nailed it. That's exactly what Skid Row has always felt like to us too, and that's why it resonated with us because we felt like we were the underdogs, you know?
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, so we always felt that we were a part of the audience anyway. Like as much as the audience might be able to relate to us, we could relate to them.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about Skid Row and this fist-pumping rebel anthem. What do you remember about this song and album in the summer of '89? What do you think about Skid Row? To get more of this interview and many others, make sure to click on our Patreon link below and also join our community by subscribing below. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.